Ankylosing spondylitis is a condition that does typically start earlier on, and so it's typically a disease process that begins when people are in their 20s or even late teens. It often starts with a very sort of slow stiffness of the hips or the neck, and what's happening inside the body is actually that the ligaments between the joints of our hips and our spine, and then throughout the spine, they actually start to harden. And it's typically something that goes from the neck down and the hips up. And if it can be sort of caught and identified early, then we can do lots of things to try to maintain mobility of those joints. I really like to work collaboratively with physical medicine practitioners, whether that's a physiotherapist or a chiropractor or other individuals that are really mechanically working to maintain range of motion. But again, also the inflammatory perspective, it's inflammation that's driving the calcification of these ligaments. Your body is literally adding bone where there shouldn't be bone. And so it really depends on when I find a person or when they find me ultimately. If they find me earlier in their disease process and they still have great mobility through their hips and their lower back and their neck, then the goal is to maintain that and to keep that mobility. If a person finds me and they're already pretty rigid and their spine is fused in certain sections, it really becomes about trying to protect the joints above and below the fusions, because we know that the spine all works really lovely together to allow us to have what we call full range of motion. And so when we have fusion of certain segments, the segments above and below take on added burden for movement. And that's where, even if the disease itself isn't moving into those joints, arthritis is, and pain and inflammation is. So again, it's a combination of managing the disease itself and managing the symptoms and the associated things that go with that disease. Ankylosing spondylitis is another of the more common autoimmune diseases. I've actually seen quite a bit of them in my practice and seen it anywhere from the 20-something that was just diagnosed right through to the 60-something that has 75% fusion of the spine, and working a lot with pain management and mobility management, and again in that very collaborative environment with the physiotherapists and with the rheumatologists to try to dial in a combination of conventional and integrative medicines. So, ankylosing spondylitis falls in that same category of rheumatological conditions. So just as I mentioned in rheumatoid arthritis, how diet plays such an integral role to the symptoms of rheumatoid, so the stiffness and the pain and the achiness, ankylosing spondylitis has the same features. It's very, diet triggers a lot of that inflammation and a lot of the stiffness and a lot of the achiness. And so managing those symptoms becomes both using anti-inflammatories and reducing the trigger of the inflammation.